After starting best ball drafting earlier and doing more drafts in 2024 than any other channel, it's time to finally reap what we sowed in the world of best ball. The playoffs are here. 14 weeks have gone by. Lots has gone wrong. Some lots has gone right. We'll figure it out. That we're going to do today is we're going to look at the top players. We're going to look at the upcoming odds for week 15 to see what games look like the best environments, what players should be going off. I'll speculate on that. Look at the top performers as well, and we'll look at my team, see what I have left here. Thankfully, still have some teams left despite the lack of Saquon Barkley. Let's get into it. Let's pull up Underdog sticker for this one. Hey, it's an Underdog day. Your top odds right now, I guess really all the odds for every game. Let's go game by game here. And shout out to the chat as well. I see you guys are already dying to talk about your teams. Our guy Dwayne doing well. I don't know what Greg's talking about here. We're on StreamYard. We're fine. Probably doesn't save audio afterwards, so we might not have a podcast version. We'll be okay. Furiously sifting through Italian racism on X to find info on TK wildcards. Yes, the poor Italians being both heralded for what our boy Luigi's done and both also mocked repeatedly. The amount of Luigi memes, my God. Everything's got to be Mario and Luigi, Waluigi jokes. If you have a Waluigi joke in the chamber, maybe don't spray it around like Luigi himself did. Let's talk about the odds. Thursday Night Football. This is an interesting one. Isaac Guerrero right now questionable with the foot injury. We'll see if he can go this week. But a pretty decent total here, 49 combined points and Rams-Niners. We have seen the Niners defense not be that good on the year. Then last week, they shut down the Bears entirely in a game that really surprised me. Thought the Bears were going the right way, the Niners were going the wrong way. Instead, the Niners, despite having, I think at this point, under a 10% chance of making the playoffs, they came out swinging in that one, looked good. Niners teams, if you're one of those people that I would say got lucky with the Juwan Jennings thing, if I'm going to be favorable about it, player who should have been replaced and displaced by a first-round draft pick, and having Brandon Ayuk get the big deal, and having Deebo Samuel, they're all still in a big deal. Jennings looks like a good spot. Again, he's been the best receiver in that Niners core. So if you have him, one more week against the Rams, soft defense on Thursday Night Football should look good. Rams side, Puka Nacua goes for almost 50 fantasy points this past week. Gonna have to press it hard again going against the Niners. So really the key pieces here I think are going to look pretty good. Obviously, you want to have your McCaffreys, but your Kittles, your Deebo, you have one more shot against a soft defense. Something can hit here. Deebo at this point, I kind of have no hope for, but honestly, if he's going to hit, the Rams are one spot to do it. Jets and Jacksonville. So Aaron Rodgers and co get the softest matchup they've probably had this entire year. Unfortunately, they're definitely going the wrong way. Breece Hall, we'll see if he can go this week. They're not holding him out for the year. If not, you get Braylon Allen getting work siphoned away to Isaiah Davis throughout against this Jacksonville defense. Jets are a 3.5 point favorite here, so you think they're going to be going with the key guys again for at least one more week. But Jets, Jacksonville, your Garrett Wilson shares, that could go off here. Devontae Adams looked really good last week, was a top pick to play by ETR. I had him a lot in Battle Royales as a result using that solver tool. Devontae Adams looked probably the best he's looked this entire year as well, as he's positioning himself for his next contract that probably won't be the same one he has with the Jets right now. So Jets versus Jacksonville, you have a shot here. We'll see what happens with injuries later in the week, but some high scoring on that side. Evan Ingram going against the Jets, looking okay. Brian Thomas's routes look a little bit better than I would have thought they would. A lot of cutting routes now is what he's getting, so the workload a little more friendly for Mac Jones as opposed to just running kind of vertical routes that Mac Jones can't hit. Brian Thomas, I would say not dead against a soft Jets defense, but everything here looking okay. So Jets, Jacksonville, not a great total, but definitely a matchup you want to get some shares of or could have shares that are valuable in best ball. Jeffrey Kendrick here. Spags are more in the industry. Good luck. Good luck to all of you guys as well. And I appreciate Kendrick as always for being my hype man. Morning Spags, 2 in the thoughts here. Another top, I don't know if you're still top 5 BBM because BBM DB was down this morning, but all year long, 2 in the thoughts was top 5. Our guy Mathology also finished number 1 overall in BBM, so kudos to him. A weirdo team, but definitely had some splash play takes infused in it. I think he give me credit for Jaden Daniels McLaurin in particular, along with Bucky. So Mathology's team, by the way, Mathology probably had the year of everybody in the community. Finished 6th in the Dog Bowl, I believe. Won the Dog Bowl seat himself, and now finishing number 1 overall. Doesn't win you money, but we'll see what he does when we head to the playoffs. He did finish number 5. Yeah, that top 5 did not move around very much as the weeks went on. So kudos to 2 in the thoughts. Kudos to Mathology for their top finishes. Wish it meant money for you, but also that would take money away from the prize pool. So sorry, I guess, but good job. Play the same team in the marathon next year. You're going to be crushing. Washington, minus 7.5 point favorites against New Orleans here. So no Derek Carr. He's concussed and broke his hand. New Orleans' defense is not good. The concern point for me would be, I don't know that this is a game where we have to see Jaden Daniels and the boys push it to the limit too hard. That said, Terry McLaurin's route tree, I was going through all the next-gen stats, route charts last night because that's where my head was. McLaurin's routes look so much better in week 13 than they have at any point of the year, where he wasn't just running kind of routes downfield, he was cutting a lot of breaking routes. Again, that's what you want to see for a lot of your top receivers to have their most fantasy upside. So for McLaurin here, him getting a touchdown, 2 touchdowns is not crazy, but a Brian Robinson spot I think looks a little more likely here. Still no Eckler for the spot. Chris Rodriguez has played well lately. He could take some work away. Jeremy McNichols is still there. But this spot where you're a huge favorite against New Orleans in a dome, maybe they put up a lot of points, maybe they don't. 43 implied points, though, is not the highest total, but it's more than the New Orleans side. That's not going to help out at all here. Bengals and Titans. So this is another one, 48 implied points. The Bengals are still full go. They're one team where there's logically no reason they're doing what they're doing, including last night. Massive games for Jamar Chase in particular. Chase Brown looking good as well. For the Bengals, though, going against Tennessee, another soft team defensively. Definitely a little bit tighter against the run. Should be able to be a good spot for Jamar Chase again, potentially. For T. Higgins again, potentially. For Chase Brown again, potentially here. So Cincinnati still full go, even though they have, I think, a 1% chance of making the playoffs, even with that win yesterday. It might have been a little bit higher now. It might be 2-5. But really, not the highest odds. They're still going. Jamar Chase is chasing the Triple Crown. No pun intended. So that's the Bengals for you. Shout out guy, Mr. Poopy Butthole was DMing me yesterday. Ooh, we took down a small spy last night. Shout out to Spags, hard work every day. Spags mentioned snap shares and tight ends, which helped me get to the sample. Faded Higgins for Lamb. Thanks for the advice. Max the 3 Bengals dudes. There we go. Hey, I appreciate Mr. Poopy Butthole. Very nice super chat. And again, saw him doing well yesterday. He DM'd me like a fucking idiot. DM'd me in the first half, like, I'm going to take this down. And he actually did. So for all the gambling concerns, which I feel the same way about prematurely celebrating with how stack corrections, everything moves, Mr. Ruby Butthole did it. And to his credit, too, playing the spy, speaking of tournament selection a little bit for DFS, his same lineup, and it's not to discredit him, but like to reflect how these different tournaments are. He won 5K in the spy. That same lineup in the other big tournaments was split 20, 50 ways, I believe. So like by playing in a smarter tournament for him and getting in a lineup that was sharp and unique for that field, he did really well for himself. So have to give Mr. Poopy Butthole a lot of credit for that. That really was great play by him. But shout, hey, you deserve it, man. Kudos to you. Hope it gets you where you need to be for the year. Advance 180. Wow, Jesus. That's a lot of teams. It's a lot of teams. I have many less, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Dallas, Carolina, another spot here. We're getting the Carolina Panthers as a favorite against Dallas. Carolina themselves, not a high octane attack. Chuba Hubbard, though, with that Jonathan Brooks injury. I got to say, one thing I noticed in my portfolio, I have a lot of hyper fragile RB teams where Jonathan Brooks is one of 4 RBs that are still left. Fucking drives me insane. Feel bad for Jonathan Brooks. Feel bad for myself as well. That said, though, Chuba Hubbard, if you have him, he's got a renewed sense of life here. Panthers looking viable here, hanging in with another tough team. It'd be nice if they win one of these games to give you the real hope for them moving forward. For Chuba, though, the workload without having that second back, and you don't have Miles Sanders, Raheem Blackshear also got hurt this past week, too. I assume they'll sign a depth piece or something if Blackshear can't go, maybe something from the practice squad. But it's a Chuba Hubbard backfield against a soft Dallas team. We saw them. They were not good against Chase Brown. Chase Brown, kind of the same thing he always does, where he'll have a few runs that fall a little bit short of expectation, then he'll break a few great ones. That one where he did finally got a touchdown on it after he initially called him out of bounds. He opted the Salvation Army thing. Great burst on that play, getting outside. Opportunities there for Chuba Hubbard to have a good day against Dallas. So he's another player to me to watch out for. I think Zero RB is decently set up this week with Brian Robinson's spot, with Chuba Hubbard's spot, Braylon Allen potentially here. There's a lot of guys you can go to. I realized I skipped over Kansas City and Cleveland. This one, I don't have a ton of faith in. You really need Jameis to push. I will say the Chiefs defense analytically getting worse by the week in terms of the EPA metrics. So maybe you could see Jameis throw himself into this game with a 45.5 point implied total. If you do see Jameis push more, it's possible to see KC a little bit better on their side. The guy I'm watching out for the most for KC in this kind of match against Cleveland, do you think Pacheco getting going at some point down the home stretch here seems likely? With the snap share coming up and Kareem Hunt's kind of falling off the cliff. Still have your Hopkins, Kelsey. I'm not as into lately. I just don't think the workload's there from as much. Frankly, think they're starting to kind of ramp him down to get him full go again for the playoffs because they really didn't want to give him the workload they did this entire year for, especially in the early part of the year. So we'll see how that works out. But KC, you're hoping for a shootout here. Jerry Jeudy, certainly not dead. He's been carrying you. Elijah Moore, if you somehow have him, he's not dead. Tillman's still in concussion protocol, too. If Tillman's back in, I think all those guys look a little bit worse. For right now, though, Cleveland having to keep up with KC is certainly viable. Miami and Houston. Sorry, going out of order here, but I did skip that game. KC defense has kind of given up in the air lately. Yeah, I mean, they're not as good as they have been. And I mean, frankly, they're not as good on either side of the ball, but they just keep winning. I think they're a pretty fragile team heading into the playoffs. So when they go into the playoffs, it does become kind of a different approach where Mahomes will drop back 50 times in a game. Like they're going to change who they are offensively once they get to a point where they have to. But with what we've seen so far in season, I'd worry about the Chiefs a little bit personally. House Njoku and more teams advancing. Leverage against all the Judy feels good. Yeah, sure. That's a reasonable way to look at it. Miami and Houston. Houston a 3-point favorite here. Honestly, doesn't feel like they deserve it necessarily without Miami's played. This one could go nuts here. 47 implied total. Houston coming off the bye week. I think if you're going to be a coach of who should be up for head coaching jobs like Bobby Slowick was at least assumed to be this year, it seems like the kind of year where you would then take a bye and go, what are we doing wrong here? This offense is not as good as it was last year. And I think there's a chance they come out reinvigorated here, gunning a little bit more, passing over expectation a little bit more against a tough matchup in Miami. So for Houston here, I think you have some hope. Obviously not for your Diggs teams, but for everything else. Joe Mixon, for Nico Collins, for Tank Dell, for even Dalton Schultz, I think you're in play. Miami on their side, Tyreek Hill had his best game of the year. Jalen Waddle still in the mix. Jonnu Smith still in the mix. Achane still looking good. Mostert banged up, so we'll see how that affects things moving forward. But that's a decent game here. So Miami, Houston, maybe one that could carry a lot of boats if you have that one accidentally stacked up or intentionally stacked up for week 15. And again, for BBM too, in case it's worth pointing out, 1 out of 13 advanced this week, 1 out of 16 advanced next week. So you got to beat 12 other guys legit this week. And, this kind of game environment could be what honestly what does it. Baltimore and the Giants. Baltimore a 15-point favorite against a Giants team that is seemingly keeping Drew Lock in to effectively tank for them. Baltimore on their side, Zay Flowers I would think looks okay. Derrick Henry, though, being in a smash spot here seems most likely. Henry has not had that big outlier game in a while. As a result, his advance rate probably dropped behind your Saquons, maybe even some other guys at wide receiver and RB. Still a high advance rate guy, though, but if you're in a pod with a bunch of Derrick Henrys, I would worry about it with this 15-point favorite here. That is the largest road favorite we've had by a wide margin. I believe this is the highest money line we've had all year, too, at minus 1325. So, and Baltimore, to me, does not, they've blown some games this year. I don't think they're Philadelphia playing down in Carolina here. I just don't think the Giants have the dogs. So that's that. Money Hack, Cannabis, and Snacks TFS. There we go. That's what we have. A little bit of something for everybody here. A little worried the Ravens don't need to pass it on this one. I would be worried about that too. The thing is, Lamar loves to pass. I would think Lamar, with how he's been playing, probably thinks he's an MVP candidate. I don't know that he should be. I don't know that he is, quite frankly, especially with games like Josh Allen put up last week. But anyway, I think that he's probably going to pass here because he just needs to keep the stats moving. And a bye week too. They're probably going to come out with some fun plays, a little more efficient here against a Giants team that's pretty hapless. So you get pass game production, but I do expect Derrick Henry to get there pretty much no matter what, barring them getting into a lot of third and long somehow. And then Justice Hill does his thing. But I don't see how Derrick Henry doesn't hit this week. New Orleans and Arizona. Drake May was off this week. If you're relying on him, you got a shot against the Cardinals here as a pretty big underdog on the road. The issue is Drake May, your stack partners with him. Hunter Henry looks okay this week. Ramondre may be okay as well, though Gibson's been taking enough workload away. Hard for me to love anything on New England side, as I haven't this entire year anyway. But Drake May himself putting up a good day, I think wouldn't be a crazy thing to see at all. Kyler, though, and his team going against New England, I think this is a week where you could see Harrison get back on track. He's had a weird pattern of having a touchdown one week. I think Ian Hart has tweeted out. Touchdown one week, no touchdown next week. Touchdown one week, no touchdown next week. He is due for a touchdown with that modeling. So think that for New England, Arizona here. The Cardinal side would appeal to me more. James Conner certainly in play. New England, not a good defense on any front, but really getting kind of pounded on the run game. Should be a high probability here. Harrison McBride getting a touchdown here would not be crazy either. It's a nice total for this game, and I think it's going to be more the Arizona side carrying it. Frankly, New England keep it close enough too that Arizona keeps going throughout hard enough as well. Tampa Bay has been an important team this year. They're facing a tough Chargers this week. Chargers facing a soft Tampa Bay team on their side. So if you have Lad McConkey, you're hoping he gets back out there because he should be able to really get open over and over and over again against Tampa Bay's defense. Quentin Johnston still in play if he's been carrying you a little bit, scoring some touchdowns. He's okay here against Tampa Bay. The running backs against Tampa Bay still would not trust. Gus Edwards might give you one touchdown. It's hard to expect much more. Yeah, I think really the pass games here for the Chargers will be most appealing. Tampa Bay side, they got to get Mike Evans going, but it's not really a great spot to do it against a tough Chargers defense overall. I would think this is a game where they rely on the running game more. Hopefully Bucky Irvin can go after his back injury flared up last week. Rashad White, if you're banking on him, he took a lot of work away because of that. Basically, Sean Tucker was involved, but not really involved. It was all Rashad White backfield again, so this is a key spot. Bucky Irving needs his pack to loosen up this week, which is hard to hear for a guy who's as young as he is, and frankly also as small as he is and picked up some miles this year. So hopefully Bucky can go this week. Thankfully, it's a Sunday game. Just talking about your advanced team. Hey, I appreciate that, Steve. Hope it works out well for you. Going to be, I don't know what we're supposed to say. What's the fake word supposed to say for that word that Chung said? It's going to be surficidal, trying to figure out. He's going to be surfing really hard about who to play between Kyler and Herbert again, week 1 playoffs. Any thoughts early? That's a tough one. I'd probably always go Kyler relative to ADPs, but I get it. And fucking Arizona scores first drive every week, then never scores again. Yeah, hey, look, they're a volatile team, but they have so much talent here, and I still will take away what they did last week with force-feeding guys a little bit more. I think it's going to be a little bit more in play again this week against New England, but we'll certainly see. Indianapolis and Denver, tough spot on paper for Anthony Richardson and the boys. AR gets a tough secondary, is never really what you want to see. That said, we have seen Jameis strafe these guys lately, so maybe there's a little bit more weakness there than it seems. But they've been well coached all year. One of the best EPA per dropback teams on defense is Denver. EPA per pass teams as well. They shut out the run well enough as well. Not a bad total at 44 implied points. 3.5 point spread, favoring the Broncos at home. AR can get there in any situation, especially with him running with reckless abandon. So I think AR is not dead. Would have a tough time. Down, still banged up. Pittman, an okay play, but hard to trust. Alec Pierce, same thing there. Tough to expect a lot from Indy, but I think AR should be fine for the most part. Denver's side, Courtland Sutton's been one of the best receivers in football in terms of his usage, his route tree and all that. Again, I was looking at those next-gen charts, and every week it's Courtland Sutton being used, cutting across the field, lots of routes, breaking routes are going to help him get open and score points. Indianapolis' defense has not been good on the year, but has been getting better week to week. So it's not like a soft matchup anymore. But I think Courtland Sutton would look like a good play here. Javonte Williams, I have a hard time trusting. Coming off the bye, you would think it'd be time to use Estime a little bit more. But Jaleel McLaughlin had the big game last time out for Denver, so I think you're probably in the still the same running back situation. Troy Franklin getting going post-bye wouldn't be crazy. They did cut Josh Reynolds seemingly for a reason. Devon Vele, if you're relying on him at all for some reason, he could get there. Mims, the routes are not great. It's just straight downfield stuff, but he could score a touchdown anytime. At least they're trying to get him those plays. But Denver stacks are something I'm relying on down the home stretch, the Franklin Mims part on a few of my early BBM teams. So I hope they go off. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. Very low total here, 42 implied points. This one expected to play more defensively. We've seen Pittsburgh getting shootouts lately. We've seen Philadelphia do the opposite. Philadelphia also has a weird thing going on right now. So two-pronged, really. And let me see if this is still the case for Pittsburgh, because they historically play a ton of man defense. And this year they're playing less, still playing 29% man defense rate. So A.J. Brown historically beats the shit out of the Steelers because of the fact they play so much man. A.J. Brown this week also warring with Jalen Hurts. You guys might have seen the reports out there. Brandon Graham, who hurt himself for the year, might be done career-wise, how old he is. He was talking at like a local Philly media thing and saying how, 1 and 11 just can't get along, and 11 needs to be kinder to 1. 1's trying really hard. Basically saying like A.J. Brown's being a dick to Jalen Hurts. They're having a feud. They used to be friends is what he said. They're not right now. And if you look at the games too, there's enough plays where A.J. Brown is open and Jalen Hurts is looking his way on the film. And he's not throwing the ball. It feels like a week that this has to correct itself a little bit. Like the squeakiest wheel narrative is there. A.J. Brown also kind of threw everything through the passing offense under the bus in a post-game interview too. So we have kind of our diva A.J. Brown thing. We've also seen in a Nick Sirianni team in the past, granted different offensive coordinator, but we've seen this happen in the past where A.J. Brown bitches violently. He then gets the ball a ton to overcompensate the next week. So I think it's certainly possible we see the pass game move more. Tomlin saved us from Saquon. So this is the thing too. So Saquon had a good game this week. I thought it was really odd that in this week where there's some passing offense acrimony, and also the fact that, so like the offensive line, I mentioned it on the Friday video, I believe, Saquon, apparently the offensive lineman put up like a picture of Saquon and like our savior in a way that almost felt ironic to me. And then we had that game where the run game offense was not as big of a part. Still, they blocked for him. Like he had a bunch of 10-yard chunk plays, finished with over 100 yards like I thought he would. Just didn't think he was going to score as much as people needed for DFS. Ended up being incredibly right about that. So I'll wait for the apologies from the Saquon fucking dick suckers out there. We won't even say jock riders or anything. Just straight up Saquon dick sucking here. Point being though is like there's something weird to see right now that I don't like it. I mean, I'm not an Eagles guy, so whatever. But I think the pass game has to correct itself here. Pittsburgh's going to make it tough on the run game, and Saquon in tough matchups, frankly, has just not been the same dude. So I think you get a shot here if you're Saquon. I mean, honestly, a bad day for Saquon is still 15 to 20 fantasy points right now. So he's probably not going to be the thing that kills your team. And for a lot of people, and even for me, a few teams I have, if Saquon's the only thing carrying you, going against Pittsburgh is not what you want to see because like you're going to be in a pod with people where they have Saquon and other good guys, or they don't have Saquon and they have even better players who come over the top of Saquon this week. So you are at a real risk, like has been the case this entire year if you're playing Saquon. And frankly, the Derrick Henry teams, if you have a Derrick Henry team going against your Saquon team, I would really worry about that relative to matchup and game total. Saquon sack riders. There we go. There's a lot of things to call them. I mean, they're literally just obsessed with Saquon. They want to be him. They want to be inside of him. I think is how that looks. Buffalo, Detroit, 54.5 implied points. This is the game that could break everything this week. We saw Josh Allen go absolutely nuts last week. Detroit's defense is tough. I do think they can do things that the Rams could not do in a million years and haven't done at any point this year. So wouldn't shock me to see this one play a little bit under total. But that said, that is a really high total in this modern 2024 NFL at 54.5 implied points. So I think you got to like David Montgomery. Tough running matchup. James Cook breaking one touchdown, always a possibility. Amon-Ra St. Brown feels like they need to get him going in this spot just to be able to pick off some first downs along the way. J-Mo, not crazy about that one. Then you probably advance at a good rate, Jay, and you probably are going to be right amongst the chalk. So more power to you. I hope it works out for you. A lot of teams, though, have that exact same combination as well. So great. Green Bay, Seattle. Anyway, Buffalo, Detroit, really, whatever pieces you want here could go off. Khalil Shakir looks like the best Bills receiver to target. Amari Cooper could get there in a given week. Kincaid coming back in would certainly be nice to see if you are a backer of him, but if not, helps out everybody else there. But I think the one to watch for me, David Montgomery, Gibbs, Amon-Ra. Detroit, I think, could put up a lot of points against Buffalo. I think Buffalo's going to have a hard time putting up points. You're probably see a lot more Josh Allen rushing, though, if he's been advancing you. Green Bay, Seattle. Tough. Jay, what are you drafted? You got Breece Hall, too? That's way too many RBs up top. Anyway, whatever, Jade. Sorry, you're not paying member right now. You can do whatever you want. At one point, you're making good teams. I know that. Green Bay, Seattle, -3 points on the road here going against Seattle. Green Bay's defense tough. Seattle's defense less tough, but still a little bit better than average. Not a great matchup, I think, for either side. Josh Jacobs keep doing what he's doing. Looks good. If Charbonnet gets another week without Kenneth Walker, which seems like it's going to be the case, the crush of volume for him should help him out as well. Those would be the main guys I look for here. In terms of the pass game, Jaden Reed coming off the 0 day, which did call in the show, being a bad day, not a 0-for-0 day. He's probably got to bounce back here as well. To what extent, I can't tell you. I think Watson and Dobbs, or Watson and Wicks, if Dobbs will see if he can get out there. He's still concussion protocol as of this weekend. Those guys all pull so much away from Reed. It's hard to say that Reed's going to have some explosion game here, but certainly in play. Seattle side, the pass game still working well. JSN's there. Honestly, I don't hate the game. Total feels a little bit higher than I would think it would be, but this could be one I think that plays a little bit lower, and Josh Jacobs is kind of the main vessel here for how that offense moves. Monday Night Football, weirdly a doubleheader again. You get Chicago, Minnesota. On paper, defensively minded matchup. Minnesota, though, playing well, coming off the hot game, probably the best that Sam Darnold's looked. Gets a very soft Atlanta secondary. That said, Chicago is not the team to beat up on, despite what they gave up against the Niners last week. We'll see, though. I really did not think that Bears team looked like the best parts of the Bears that I've been buying in on. So Minnesota having one more week here. Jefferson getting going. They did just shut down Jefferson a couple weeks ago, but that's a pretty big spread favoring Minnesota here. And I think Chicago, based on this total, I would guess Chicago, not a team I'd want to bank on very much. Maybe Odunze can get there again. The spread seems a little 1-2-3 Cancun-y here for the Bears, which sucks because I like Thomas Brown, and I think he should get a shot to win the job. But that did not come out like a motivated team last week against the Niners. They looked the worst they have since really any changes they've made. Atlanta and Vegas here. Good Kirk Cousins get right spot if he goes. They've reportedly had no talks about Penix starting, even though the industry, media, social media in particular, wants Penix to start. That said, they can get Cousins again. I think it's a good Cousins bounce back spot. Also good Brock Bowers bounce back spot against a soft defense here. That said, he didn't get there last week versus Tampa Bay, which was a similarly soft matchup. So that worries me a little bit here. But your Jacoby Myers looks okay. Your Brock Bowers looks okay. Your Sincere McCormick shares, all of those, they look fine as well, assuming that Madison and White can't go again. Atlanta on their side, Mooney always in play against soft defenses. He's honestly been better than Drake London overall so many weeks now that probably Mooney, one of the best plays to have in general. Now we know he's healthy and he's good to go. Feels like London and Pitts are due for a get right spot. Bijan too, just having a monster day here would not be crazy. Oh, that spread favoring them. But look, there's a lot of spots here that look pretty good and a few spots that I think are going to be really tough for the chalk. So we'll see how that goes. Your top players so far, we're going to go through this part a little bit faster than usual so we can just get to my lineups. I don't think I'm going to look at every lineup today because frankly, I haven't even looked at every lineup of my own. I just kind of want to see how things work out, but we'll do that in a little bit as well. And guys, if you appreciate this content, of course, the end of a lifelong, feels like a year-long journey here of having, frankly, the best takes in the industry in January and February and having pretty good ones the rest of the year as well. Please show some love, hit that like button, subscribe. Of course, Splash Play here growing. Our Splash Play NBA channel also growing, trying to hit our first 500 subs on there after about a month and change doing work. So go check them both out. Show some love if you can. Of course, I'm here doing work Monday to Friday every day at 11 a.m. and on the Splash Play NBA channel Monday to Friday at 4 p.m. and the Sunday main event video where we get fucking incalculable amounts of weirdos disrupt me during the chat. That's Sunday at 9 a.m. for the final takes video, and that continues on throughout the playoffs as well. All right, your top scorer of the year, despite the bye week, Lamar Jackson. Despite Josh Allen put up 52 fantasy points, it is still Lamar Jackson, average-wise by a good amount as well, by about 1.3 fantasy points. Total-wise, still about 16 more. So Lamar puts it down week after week, the best floor and ceiling in fantasy football. He's not giving you a game like Josh Allen just did. So that's the one thing you want to critique him for, I guess. Josh Allen probably got carried this week or carried a lot of best ball teams. So Lamar hasn't quite done that this year, but just being this good every single week, he's been worth the ADP. That said, he's going to be one of the chalk plays for the week for sure, going into a matchup where the Giants are going to be hapless, but you do expect them to run a little bit more as a result. Maybe find Lamar's floor a little bit more, but I would still think no matter what out of Lamar, you're probably getting about 20 half PPR points this week. It's basically that. Where do you see what pods you advance for? Yeah, probably in a day or so. Nothing yet. Autism Sundays. Look, I'm not the one saying it, but yes, the chats get a little weird on Sundays. We can all agree with that. Joe Burrow, but hey, still good shows. Lots of views. Joe Burrow, 25.6 fantasy points for him. Burrow's been playing incredibly well, keeps doing it over and over again. Really still think you have the hanging issue of that the Bengals were literally playing for nothing. If they lost to the Cowboys yesterday, I think that would have been maybe a last blow to the Bengals just playing in your fantasy playoffs. That said, they're still going here. Good spread seems to favor Burrow being full go again against Tennessee. He could do it one more week for you. The issue is like Jamar Chase, if you've been kind of getting by on his outlier efforts, you might have a T. Higgins day coming up. You might have one of the tight ends taking some production away. But Chase, he's a leading receiver for a reason. He's playing well. The Joe Burrow-Chase combo, though, going to be pretty well represented in the field, if I had to guess. Jalen Hurts, 24 fantasy points for him this week. He moves up to number 4. Despite him not playing well the last month, 24 fantasy points this week, the one tush-push touchdown is enough to get him there. For Hurts, you really want to see A.J. Brown be right, and you want to see A.J. Brown be heard, see the pass game start to get more work. I think they're going to have to pass more against Pittsburgh. We'll see, though. We have seen Saquon have some success against tough rushing defenses like Baltimore. I thought was a much better game than he's played against, honestly, like compared to weaker defenses, Saquon could just run in open space. Baltimore, he had to earn it, and he actually played pretty well in that spot. I think it's possible you could see Saquon be good a little, relatively against Pittsburgh, but the expectation here is that Jalen Hurts passes more, does more. So him at number 4 looks pretty good, I think, moving forward. Saquon at number 5, down week for him. Still can't be that mad of it what he's done for you on the year. That said, you do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of 15 or less fantasy points. That would worry me a little bit here because you could be going on a run potentially of a few less. That said, if you can survive with Saquon in week 17, you are going to get the nut spot against Dallas, a Dallas team that's going to lose motivation by the week. The defense, too, has been trying really hard, and they cannot hold up moving forward. Micah Parsons got hurt. Overshawn got hurt. Parsons came back in, but like those guys are like banged up now in a way that's not going to be good for week 17 against Saquon. If he's got records coming into week 17, if they're playing for that bye week, which is kind of getting away from him a little bit potentially, Saquon can still go nuts here. I just don't think week 15 is going to be one of the flagship weeks for him. I think at best, we're going to get a good week from him, but not a great one. Baker Mayfield, good week in week 14 for him. Nice matchup again on paper, just in terms of the scoring expectation. But the defense should be tough for the Chargers to see what he can do. He's paid off his ADP, though, 10 times over. Jamar Chase, been a monster as well. The only good receiver in fantasy football, I'd say. 38 fantasy points for him this week. Jaden Daniels, we'll see what we get out of the bye. 2 straight weeks of 28 or more fantasy points before the bye. I think the usage has gotten better. I think Kingsbury's humbled himself a little bit and is trying to do some different stuff. I'm happy to be carrying some Jaden tickets into the playoffs, and obviously a lot of my lineups have Jaden tickets in it. Sam Darnold, another guy who's paying off late here. Really thought he was going the wrong way a couple weeks ago. Now we've had 3 straight weeks of 19.5 fantasy points. Actually, I guess 4 straight of 19.5 or more, and 5 out of the last 6 as well. So Darnold fed Jefferson as well as he has. Jordan Addison's usage has been great. Addison might be one of those guys who is advancing teams on the home stretch, and he could spike like Zay Jones has in the past, where he carries a few teams through. I think would not be crazy to see. He's just getting used everywhere, getting targeted a lot more. So Addison, Darnold looking good. Jefferson still a pivot point to Jamar Chase. I just don't think we get smash spots like that last week too often moving forward. Let's see. Mary Squirtmas. Okay. And imagine Estime ends up being the guy. I don't know if that's likely at this point, but it would certainly be nice, but I don't think it's likely. Derrick Henry, talked about him already. He should have a good week coming up in week 15. Bo Nix, he's honestly playing well. Denver, good matchup against Indianapolis on paper, competitive enough where you see maybe Nix run a little bit more. Bo Nix, QB 11, he is paid off his ADP. He, Darnold, and Baker Mayfield were 3 you really wanted, even though Geno Smith looked like one of those guys early on. Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, both guys in good situations this week. They could certainly spike at any given week, but definitely going to have a little bit lower advance rate than some other guys, I would guess, in this range. Mahomes up to number 14, which is good news for him, but 2 straight weeks of under 17 fantasy points. I just am not a Mahomes believer, but your hope is that they get pushed this week via Jameis and then have some better results. I think it's possible that he has a little bit more of a ceiling spot this week, even though I certainly don't want to see it. Bijan number 15, Gibbs not too far behind, Brock Purdy not too far behind. Those are your guys. QB, you basically got the idea already. Your top guys, Lamar, Josh Allen, Burrow, Hurts, Baker, talk about all these guys. Jaden, Darnold, Nix, Goff, Kyler, Mahomes. Purdy can go on a run here. His advance rate's probably not that high. Don't know what the Niners are playing for. At a certain point, they may realize that. But that said, they're trying to get in the playoffs as an under 10% chance, so they're going to be full go until they're eliminated. Geno at 13, Caleb at 14, Jordan Love at 15. This range of guys, although owned, could spike here, especially the guys with the stack. Caleb, I'd worry about the most, but a Stafford double can hit and carry you through a round. Herbert, if he gets Ladd back, Ladd and Quentin Johnson could give you enough with Disley out, maybe to get you where you need to go. Aaron Rodgers, unfortunately, I think in the matchup this week against Jacksonville, could be enough to get you there with Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. Stroud, high total here, surprisingly high total against Miami for this team. I think he looks pretty good. You have a shot with these QBs. The only guys you really don't have a shot with are guys who gotten benched like Daniel Jones, your Derek Carr, who's hurt again, your Trevor Lawrence is hurt. These guys are obviously not going to do anything for you, but I don't think these QBs in the middle are dead, even though it's going to be tough with some of the better QB matchups we're going to see. RBs and half-point PPR. I think we're pretty likely to see that happen. If they're not pulling them yet, I think they're going to. The thing, too, is like Vegas is a soft enough matchup. If he fails against Vegas, I think you probably consider moving on from him just because of the fact that Vegas is like, that's a get-right matchup. But if he doesn't get right, then I think that tells you a lot. But if I had to guess, he gets right this week, has a good day, and they just keep riding out for him. And I would guess they make the playoffs, but they might narrowly miss it. They're still in the hunt for the NFC South. So I don't know why you change anything. Like everybody in the South is still in the hunt for the NFC South, besides the Panthers. Saquon, your number 1 RB. We talked about him already. Derrick Henry, I think he's in a good spot this week. Talked about him. Bijan looks okay. Jahmyr Gibbs, I still want David Montgomery more than him relative to ADPs, but he could put up a huge day here at a low advance rate. So, or a lower advance rate than a lot of guys. He's probably done better than Breece Hall in terms of advance rate, but he's not advancing as much as these guys. Not as much as advancing as much as Jamar Chase either. So Gibbs, lower owned piece that could get you something. Kamara, he gave up 43% of the workload, I believe, to Kendre Miller last week. He's not going to win you anything if that's the case. Kendre could easily get hurt again. This offense is going to get worse now with going back to Rattler would be my guess. It could be Jake Haener as well filling in. Haener might be good for Kamara. Rattler would not be, I don't think. Just don't love Kamara at this point. He's paid off well for his ADP. But in that range, I'd rather have Montgomery right now. I'd rather have Mixon a little bit earlier. I'd rather have Josh Jacobs a little bit earlier. I'd probably rather have some guys later as well. Kamara's kind of in no man's land to me. And again, that's now including the bye week, 5 straight weeks of under 15 fantasy points. A little bit tough. Jacobs crushing right now. Marshawn Lloyd not coming back till week 16, so he gets unencumbered run for a few more here. But Josh Jacobs playing, honestly, like one of the best RBs in football right now for a team that's playing for something that matters. They really have to fight to make the playoffs now because Minnesota's pretty much locked into the number 2 in that division. The Lions, assumingly, knocked into number 1. At the very least, Minnesota and the Lions are 1 and 2 in some order. And that means relying more on Jacobs on the home stretch. So Jacobs' quiet starts of the year would have worried me if we had gotten Marshawn Lloyd back in because I think Lloyd would have taken some work away meaningfully. You're not getting that now. So Jacobs, I think, pretty well positioned as a lower advance rate guy, but who was cheaper, allowed you to get some good receivers in with it. And if he's your second guy with a Saquon or Henry, or your third guy, I guess, with them, and you got decent enough receivers with that, he can do some damage here. Jacobs being in a winning BBM lineup by the end of it all would not shock me. Kyron Williams, 23 fantasy points for him. He's your leverage against other guys in that range. Same thing for Achane. Hard to love those guys. Mixon, we'll see what we get coming out of the bye. Obviously, a lot of workload going around, but we really need to see a better Houston team overall, and that would help Mixon out. Montgomery at 10, Chuba 11, Chase Brown 12. These guys all crucial to me coming up on my teams. James Cook, 4 fantasy points for him this past week. His spikes are random here. He gave away a lot of work to Ty Johnson last week. Ray Davis, unfortunately, not involved, though, which would have been nice. I think Ray Davis is still the best back in that room, but they just they don't feel that way. James Conner, 20 fantasy points this week, played well. Aaron Jones, 15. Breece Hall. Breece Hall was a guy I warned you guys about. I did not have good feelings on, and that is one that I got, I think, 100% right. He had a couple okay weeks, but that Breece Hall ADP did not pay off at all. All right, Jamar Chase leading the way here. Jefferson, number 2. Amon-Ra, number 3. CeeDee Lamb, number 4. So the top receivers have now kind of at least settled into a tier. Not every top receiver is up there, unfortunately. A.J. Brown, looking at you. But everybody else up top has at least paid off their price tags relatively in a year wide receiver is bad. All these guys going nuts in week 15, week 16, week 17 is what you paid these price tags for. People who drafted Saquon and Henry are not going to grasp that. But in reality, like, this is what you paid for these guys for, was to survive, start looking a little bit better than the home stretch and give you a chance to win and spike some big weeks later on. So if you got one of these guys, you got a good card in your hand. I really continue to feel strongly about that, despite how bad receiver's been on the year. My dude Terry still at number 5, despite the bye week. Suck it. I don't know. That's one of the few things that I got incredibly right, so feel good about that. Shout out Robert and Turd for the kind words on that. JSN, another great player here, up to number 6 on the year, which shocks me to see. But it really is just, he had one good game. Everything else, a couple of decent games. That's it. Same thing for Jerry Jeudy. It's really sad to see when you get past wide receiver 5, I'd say. Drake London, still somehow wide receiver 7, despite a 9.5 fantasy point game. He's at least giving you something, which is more than you could say for a lot of receivers. Garrett Wilson, good matchup this week. We'll see what he can do. He continues to look explosive out there. Already rumors about him forcing his way out of the Jets, though, which is not good. Brian Thomas Jr., great usage with Mac Jones this week. That's going to make it easy for Mac Jones to get on the ball. Again, the breaking routes, a huge thing. If you go on next-gen stats, see a lot of breaking routes. It is sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy because we're not tracking every guy. We're really tracking the targets that are going the guy's way. But when you see that, though, like Brian Thomas's usage not being all go routes, not being all post plays, like he's getting actual stuff. I think that's a good sign for him because Mac Jones could not hit him the way that Trevor Lawrence was hitting him earlier in the year. Jerry Jeudy, 15-point data looked like it'd be a lot bigger in the first half. He's still in play, would definitely get hurt if Tillman gets out of concussion protocol. Cortland Sutton hanging in despite the bye week is kind of shocking. Jaden Reed, same thing, 0, not even a bye for him, just 0 fantasy points. Darnell Mooney, 17 this week. He and Drake London function the same play at this point. Zay Flowers losing work to a lot of guys in Baltimore right now in the run game especially. Still could spike, you would hope, but we're now looking at 5 straight weeks, including the bye, of no more than 11 fantasy points. That's not great. Tyreek Hill, good usage this past week. Still not vintage Tyreek Hill usage. Signs of life, though. Hard for him to dig out of where he put you. If you somehow snuck him into a team, He's a low advance rate piece that could spike, so that works. Jordan Addison, 35 this past week. He's been soaring lately. Visually looks great. Still does have a floor, kind of playing him 7 fantasy points just last week. So that's Jordan Addison for you. And last but not least, tight ends before we get to my lineups. And BBMDB, is it up yet? BBMDB is still down, so we're not going to be able to use that. We'll have to go the old school way on Underdog. Brock Bowers, your top tight end. A down week for him. Another good matchup coming up versus Atlanta. Late night hammer as well in terms of the week 15 slate. That's the last game you're getting on the slate. So Brock Bowers, crucial play for me. I'm sure for a lot of you guys as well, as one of the rookie tight ends we identified and stuck with a lot early on in this show. George Kittle, 18 fantasy points this week. Good week for him. Thought the Niners were dead. They're not dead. They came out feistier than ever. I'll see what they could do next week down the home stretch here, but Niners playing hard. Probably a good thing for Kittle. McBride, down week for him, needs a touchdown desperately, but still 10 fantasy points at tight end. You'll take it. Jonnu Smith, 12 fantasy points this week. Amazing year for him. He was a guy I identified early on as a value and then kind of felt like I was getting too much of. He's still a core guy for me in a lot of teams. So Jonnu, I am rooting for. If you have a Jonnu Brock Bowers team, that's great. Jonnu McBride team, that's great. Any of these top 4 in any configuration, feel pretty good about. Travis Kelce, 4 straight weeks of 11 or less fantasy points. That's not great. I think Kelsey's going the wrong way. I think Hopkins being there, them using Worthy more, Noah Gray being used more. I think none of that's good for him, and I think it's a deliberate choice to try to get him ready to go for the playoffs because they did not want to give him as much work as they did in this middle part of the year. They just kind of had to. Tucker Kraft, he keeps putting up okay games, kind of a Jonnu Smith. I don't know. Tucker Kraft, I don't love very much, but if Jaden Reed fails, Tucker Kraft's probably going to get there. It's a way to view that. Mark Andrews, honestly, has been a pretty good year. Still not worth the elite tight end capital, but he's given you 10 to 17 to 20 points enough here. Hasn't broken 20 once, but I don't think you feel bad about it. I'd still probably rather have McBride at this point, but the touchdown equity for Andrews is pretty high, whereas touchdown equity for McBride is literally 0. K. Dotton, it's the pass game for Tampa Bay worked well enough this week, but McMillan going, hurts Evans, hurts Otten. That's basically how to view that. McMillan should come back down to earth, but honestly, they've been trying to use him well all year, and they finally got him there this past week, so that's not a great sign for Otten. David Njoku, good situation with Jameis. He really needs touchdowns to get there, though. The workload's just not quite as good with Jameis as it has been with other QBs in the past, Joe Flacco in particular. But if he gets you touchdowns, he'll score a lot of points, and having the opportunity to get touchdowns is more than a lot of tight ends. Zach Ertz falls to number 10 with the bye week. He's still unfortunately in the hunt. Post-bye week rookie bump for Ben Sinnott should be in play, but Ertz they just treat him differently. He's got a different skill set. I don't think Ertz gets displaced that much, even with the bye week. Pat Freiermuth, 12 fantasy points. Hunter Henry, the bye week for him, still at number 12 overall. Sam Laporta, really the worst tight end to have so far. Hard to imagine him give you any 20 fantasy points, given that he hasn't done it once this year. But if he can spike now, it's going to advance your teams pretty well. So I have some Laporta teams moving on. He's been okay enough to survive at tight end. That's basically that. Taysom Hill, the deal with that. ACL, probably done for his career. In terms of just having that real upside you want to go to in fantasy. Kyle Pitts, 2 fantasy points here. He's going the wrong way. Coach does not think he's playing well, and then he doesn't get targets that same week, so they didn't correct anything. That's not really it. And that's all the teams. So, all right, now's the part, guys, where I get to feel abused, even though we're not really. So big board teams, talk about that first. The big board continues to be the best advantage for me. 21 to 62 teams, and that's with a lot of Marshawn Lloyd, a lot of the same bullshit I had in my main lineups overall. We've got some good teams here. You can't see scores. I have a Saquon team I drafted accidentally versus Pete on stream that advanced at as 1,900. I've got a lot of good big board teams that I feel good about. I haven't clicked through a ton of these just because I kind of just want to be surprised. I don't want to get too attached to teams at this point heading into the morass of fucking getting my ass kicked that's going to probably come the next few weeks. We got Caleb Jaden team. Got Saquon here with Montgomery, B-Rob. Jerome Ford's workload is up this week, though. It's probably a game script thing. Marshawn Lloyd, hopefully he plays week 16. Bucky Irving, Tank Bigsby. Bigsby was back to a lead bell cow-ish role for Jacksonville. That's a positive. Jefferson, Neighbors, Allen, McLaurin, all my players still alive on this team. Nobody out for the year besides J.J. McCarthy. So I've got teams like that I feel good about in the big board fundamentally. Some of them I think are hanging on by a thread. I feel like this one might have been one. Hurts and Caleb, Bijan, Swift, Brian Robinson. This one's okay. Got most of these guys still healthy for the most part. DJ Moore, Tank Dell, Cooper. This receiving core is awful, though. That's one thing I noticed. I stuck a lot of Rondale Moore and Brendan Rice in my big board teams, which is not going to help me out. But the receiving core for a lot of teams advancing is absolute dog shit. So really, if you drafted like I do throughout the year with a priority on receivers, at the very least getting like 5 out of your first 7 rounds like you've been supposed to do historically in best ball, you're going to be in a different situation than a lot of teams in these pods, if I had to guess. Obviously, we can't see the pods yet. The point being, I feel good about my big board teams. Again, not getting attached too much. That's there. I put in 2 little board entries, advanced 1. This was a weird one, too. I took a bunch of old receivers in this one, as you can see by the name. Tyreek, been bad. Diggs, been injured. Adams, been bad mostly. Cooper, been bad mostly. Kupp, been bad mostly. No, Kupp's been fine, actually. That's wrong. I was just so used to saying that they're all bad. These guys all were just a little bit cheaper than they should be, and as a result, this team, I think, worked pretty well. Kind of speaks to the value you just have to soak up in the big board more, so that's definitely going to be a priority for me when we get back to January. Obviously going to be focused on the rookie stuff like I always am here, hitting those takes early on and getting those right, but really just taking the guys at receiver that are low for no reason, like Cooper Kupp went at 51 in this big board draft, and there was really no logical reason why he did. It was just that the prices hadn't picked up to where they were going to be the rest of the year. Really scooping up that value for the big board and little board in those drafts in January. I think the most important thing you could do. Remember when Maddox said Brendan Rice would play because of his name? I thought he would play because he was good at USC, but that didn't work out either. So we both had different reasons for that not to work out. So for Best Ball Mania, I got 16 out of 150 across. To BBM DB's credit, they had me projected to get 15.9 out of 150 across, so that ended up being correct. The advance rate, not good at 16 out of 150. It's an 11% advance rate. Had 2 more throughout the weekend that could have made it. I have 1 that didn't advance by 2 fantasy points, which I don't think I can see now. It's one I lost on the last Joe Burrow touchdown and then didn't advance by 2 points, which fucking sucked. These teams were all okay. Some of them, I think this one of them was drafted in April. One of them was the first week of drafts. I think it's this one with Kyler, Jaden, and Nix. Yeah, I think it's this one. Kyler, Jaden, Nix, Joe Mixon, James Conner, Brian Robinson Jr., Chuba Hubbard, Bucky Irving, Kamani Vidal, who's somehow not dead. A nice balanced RB room, though. I like that. Harrison London, Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, Cortland Sutton, the Denver triple. I like having that. The tight ends, I don't like Laporta and Sinnott. I have for BBM. But that team, I think, has some functionality to it. Been number 1 pretty much the entire year. For me to have won by 140 points without having the Saquon bullshit, like, I feel good about those kind of teams. This one with Levis and Daniel Jones, I feel less good about, but really it's got to be Jaden carrying us. Jaden with Levis, Daniel Jones, Kyron, James Conner, Jalen Warren, Chase Brown, Jerome Ford, Marshawn Lloyd. Ford and Lloyd stuck into a lot more lineups than I would like to see, but they'll be there as low advance rate guys. Chase here carrying, of course, a lot of the weight here, scoring more than double the points of Malik Neighbors and almost double Terry McLaurin. Zay Flowers, McLaurin, Ridley, Hopkins. So we had the original Tennessee double. Now we got a KC piece. Don't mind that. McCaffrey, Sinnott, and Chig, though, is not going to do a lot for me at tight end. Got to survive with bad tight end stuff. Anyway, BBM, look, it's there. I don't really, if you guys want me to show you more teams, I can. I just don't know what the merit is right now. There are teams I feel good about that are going to get dusted immediately. There are teams I feel bad about that are going to somehow survive for a week. For me, if I can carry 5 to 10 into the semifinals between the big board and BBM, I'll at least have a shot. That's all I can ask for. I ended up at, I think, 4% Chase, maybe 6. 6.9% overall, but I think less than BBM. Yeah, 6.7%. I thought it was lower on Chase, but yeah, close to the field on him. He was unfortunately my deliberate fade because I thought the Bengals season was going to go poorly, and I got that right, and I did not get a payout for it. So that's one lesson for me too, is like, there's a difference between a team having a bad year and a team having a bad year where they don't create fantasy points. I need to get better at snuffing that out, because I was like right on teams going the wrong way. Jets, Bengals being 2 of the Sands. I'm like, I just don't like these teams this year. I don't think they're going to be good. They weren't good. And, you know, Breece Hall suffered. T. Higgins has kind of suffered because he was hurt and whatever. But really, those teams didn't suffer at all production-wise. They still did it. So that's one thing for me that I need to get better at, I would say, by like a wide margin. Besides that, my Bad Bros team, this is the one that I think is actually the most live to damage. We'll see, though, because of what the tournament structure is. But I outscored number 2 here by 160 points. And Jalen Hurts AR is my Bad Bros team. Barkley, Jacobs, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson Jr., Singletary. Pretty much all of those still alive. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Smith, Tank Dell, Michael Pittman Jr., Jaden Reed. Everybody's still alive here, even Deebo. Brock Bowers and Joku Goddard. Number one in Badge Bros is 50K to first, I believe. Yeah, 50K to first, but you get nothing for advancing. So my Badge Bros Brawl team, I did one and got it right. So we'll see how that goes when it gets to the tougher pods, but different advance rate structure. That's all that. Got number 116 in BBM. Well, hey, you know, some mathology or two in the thoughts, but happy for you. Hopefully that carries through into the playoffs. And I guess that's it on drafters. Drafters, it was a fucking bad week. The drafters sweat this year has been so unenjoyable, I have to say. We'll go back to it next year, assuming that they're going to pay me to do drafts again. But really, if you don't get those in-season plays at RB, at least one of them, like you're just done on drafters, and that's something I need to adapt to for next year. Really, I think maybe stiffed my farts a little bit too much on drafters and didn't think about structure enough because I did finish top 100 last year with just drafting the way I normally do. And this one, though, I don't know. My top team is my 28th team drafted on stream, a Cousins Lamar team. This week, we couldn't even play more than one RB. So we had Brian Robinson on bye, Ray Davis not doing anything, Justice Hill on bye, Estime on bye, and Jonathan Brooks giving us negative 0.3. So a tough scene there. Giving yourself more coverage in a bye week, I guess, is a thing. I don't know. Jamar Chase on this team, that's there. Drake London, Zay Flowers, not a bad receiving core. Shakir playing well. J-Mo playing okay. Mooney playing well. Really, this team, though, like this can't make a run to first. It doesn't fucking matter. And that's my highest scoring team. My lowest scoring team is this one. 1450 on here. Cousins, Stafford, Bryce Young, Pacheco, just the Boulevard of Broken Dreams at RB. Zamir White, who I really got more Zamir White on every site down the home stretch because of the value sensitivity where I'm just like, oh, he's like now going at 100 and he was going in the 80s for most of the drafts. I didn't like him last year and I didn't like him in drafts. And I'm like, I'll take the value. And I have Zamir White and all these teams just fucking being an albatross. So maybe there's a lesson in there. Maybe there's not. Jerome Ford, think can get better on the home stretch. We'll see. Javonte Williams, Blake Corum, not a lot to love there. Puka and Marvin Harrison still live for this combo to win it all in BBM. In week 17, Puka especially looked the best he's looked this entire year. But obviously, you know, he put up 45 fantasy points, almost 50. You're going to do that. Zay Flowers, Deontay Johnson, both on bye this week, did nothing for me. Curtis Samuel, awful pick. One of the worst picks at ADP in every draft. And I, of course, got him a little bit late as well with the value when he got hurt. Demarcus Robinson, great red zone target. DUI, not the best. Puka's a first-round guy I want. I would still want the Chase, Jefferson, Amon-Ra group the most, but I think Puka, you know, if you don't have the RBs, I think Puka just is valid. Yeah, I don't know. I have no issue with Puka. I don't know how much of Puka I'm advancing because BBM DB being down, but I hope I'm advancing a few. I mean, I know I'm advancing at least one. Pitts, Javian Sanders, Parkinson, this is a bad team. Number one right now is this guy, Joey Bombs. He's 5 points ahead. We'll see if that can hold up for him. It's going to be tough down the home stretch for the top teams on drafters. It's a Burrow, Baker Mayfield team with Saquon, Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris. So did not get Saquon and Henry, but got Saquon and Kamara. Najee, Rico Dowdle playing well. Rico Dowdle carrying a lot of teams right now. Honestly, I think I might need to reassess where I am with him. Visually, every week he's starting to look a little bit better. Still don't think he's got a ton of juice. He's not missing a lot of tackles, but he does look shot out of a cannon for the most part. So I'll give Rico Dowdle some credit. Bucky Irving coming down doesn't help him this week, but Bucky's probably given him enough throughout the year. Dylan Laube, flat zero all year. Brady wishes he had that one back. Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin still on this team. That leaves him a little bit fragile. Jacoby Myers, Josh Downs. He gets there from Jalen McMillan's 2 TDs this week. DJ Chark, Tyler Boyd. This one might have a hard time hanging in first place, but that's not a surprise. All these here, seems like our guy Wounded Geese is top 20. Kudos to him. I'm not going to read his team, but yeah, that's it. Drafters, honestly, I might not even look at it in the coming weeks, but that's where we are with drafters. So that's best ball for 2024 right now. Heading into week 15, I think we talked about a lot of matchups. If you want to skim back in the video, go check it out. My main thing I'll say to all you guys out there is, number one, like, I will say this is now my 3rd year of maxing out BBM, putting in a ton of entries across a ton of tournaments. Really think that as you go on, you want to get less attached to your teams because, like, you just realize how this all can go. And even me throughout the year, like, I should have been less attached to players than I was. Like, I really should have been a little bit more mindful of that in my draft process and overall. Like Marshawn Lloyd's a big one. Like, if I think I would have had at least an average advance rate if I just used Marshawn Lloyd picks on anybody else for half of the time I took him. So that's my kind of lesson point here. But the main thing I would say for you guys out there is like for your mental health. We always like to talk about mental health here for real. Try not to get too attached to your teams because it's going to bum you out when you get in a pod where you have 5 different Saquon, Derrick Henry teams that also somehow got Jamar Chase and other good receivers with it. It's going to be a lot of shit that comes out. A lot more randomness coming up as well. For these kind of next few rounds where the pod luck is like 99% of the battle. If you go on Twitter and you see people, there's a lot of guys who I see on Twitter every day who are like, this is my first time playing best ball. I'm doing so well. There's the same guys going to be incredibly fucking toxic next week because they had these great advance rates. The teams weren't built to win a 13-man pod or a 16-man pod in the playoffs. Those teams are going to lose to better teams in the pods or luckier teams in the pod, whatever the case may be. So this is now a game where it's like very large portion of luck. We're all back to 0 besides people having more entries. But this is it. This is it. This is the part where all the luck comes together, where players get heart attacks and games end, where COVID strikes and games don't exist anymore a couple years ago. Just keep that in mind, guys. No matter how good you feel about your teams, I can't warn you enough to not put the cart in front of the horse. Don't spend the money before it's made because you got a lot to do to make it this one. So that's that here. If you appreciate this content, guys, again, this is one of the videos I've been doing every week. It's the most niche video I do all week, so your support goes a long way here. Please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. I promise to put the same work in for every video as I do here, talking for an hour straight about fantasy ramifications in week 15. But of course, I do the best analysis of a lot of different parts of the year in the industry, and I think the chat can attest to it. That continues on coming up soon. In about a month, we'll be back in big board season preparing for top rookie QBs, RBs, wide receivers, tight ends. I nail them with pretty good accuracy every year. So that's that. So that's best ball for you. We got a couple weeks. I hope it goes well for you guys. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button. Check out Underdog. If you haven't deposited, if you're watching the best ball video, you're not deposited Underdog yet. What are you doing? $1,000 of bonus cash. Play some playoff tournaments. I'm not sure how many I'll be doing on here, but we'll probably get a few on the stream coming up. Stochastic, 15% off with the promo code SPLASH. Link in the description too. 2-game NBA slate today. Should be a fun one. I'll be doing content on @SplashPlayNBA at 4 p.m. if you want to get a leg up on that. Unabated, $30 off. Promo code down below as well. Promo code SPLASH. Link in the description to check it out. You want to get better at betting? Use market data and betting projections, custom projections for the NBA from one of the top sites out there where bettors are betting tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands based off that data. It'll work a lot better for you as well, especially if you play DFS and best ball. Building your bankroll with betting, very important thing to do. So check it out at Unabated. And thank you to all the paying members. Have to add a couple on, I think, and take a few off. But if you appreciate this content, join down below for $4.99 as well. And gamble responsibly, even though it's always money time here. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod back at 4 p.m. on at Splash Play NBA. So no matter what you're rolling with, I guess unless it's Saquon, wish you the best of luck heading up in these next few weeks of basketball. Come back for week 15, after week 15, and we'll see where things lie. So good luck, guys. See you again soon. Bye. I'm still here because some dude left a douchey chat on the way out. Hey, Scott, go fuck yourself. Okay, bye.